After hearing from several viewers on the red problem, and even my more recent video on the restriction prediction, today's video is looking at the game design of purple and how while certain card effects do contribute to its identity, there are the addition of other effects that take it over the top. To understand this topic, I looked back at previous sets and specifically events where purple cards dominated the format. And ultimately, why are certain engines, more or less the dog engine, the best engine to use? What were the unintended design flaws, and how can Bandai potentially course correct this? When you go all the way back to Special Booster 1.0, this set introduced some of the earliest cards for purple that still see some play today. And there were a focus on two things: on deletion and drawing and trashing. With BT2 Gabumon, this card is one of the earliest cards that helped with consistency of purple decks. Because when this Digimon is deleted, you had an amazing inheritable in which you were able to draw 2 cards and trash 1. Likewise, you had Tapirmon who would on deletion, draw 1. Unfortunately, it wouldn't be until Special Booster 1.5 in which you would also combine your stack with the powerful Demimeramon effect, which on deletion, drew 1 and trash 1. At the time, these effects were powerful, but ultimately there were limitations in the fact that the top end for purple ultimately wasn't that great. During the first 2 periods, most players gravitated towards Red and Blue Omnimon along with Yellow Shine Greymon. Even Imperial Dramon was moderately played. But when it came to purple, it definitely was a hodgepodge of cards that just came together. Fast forward to BT4, and you would have more cards like Labramon debut, who would now on play draw 1 and trash 1. This took away from the elements of chipping needlessly, and for a lot of players, although the card didn't have it, you might as well should have said your Digimon had jamming. More cards like Cerberusmon and Cerberusmon Werewolf Mode would debut that would give some flexibility to your attacks. And with the awesome power of Jack Raid, Lilithmon Loop was born. Lilithmon would truly shine in the 5th set because of Mega Digimon Fusion, but the 5th set would ultimately bring out card effects that would let you delete your Digimon for additional effects. Which meant previously if your Digimon wasn't getting deleted, you sure had a lot of ways now to do it. But BT6 is where developers for Bandai would continue building off these aspects of drawing and trashing. Because with this set, you now had cards like Skull Greymon and Underworld's Call in which when they are trashed, an additional effect is applied. And not long after that, the 7th set introduced arguably one of the most powerful purple cards ever created in the form of Eismon Scatter Mode. This card could on deletion draw 3 and trash 2. And for a short time, Demimeramon into Gabumon into Eismon Scatter Mode meant that if your Digimon was deleted, you had an immediate ability to draw 3, trash 2, then draw 2, trash 1, then draw 1, trash 1. In total, this was cycling through 6 cards and trashing 4. Meaning if you pitched Eismon with Scatter Mode in the trash, a free body. Pitch Nidhoggmon for the effect of any of these cards, gain memory. And although this was just one avenue in which players could gain memory, purple would begin deviating its effects to build the next forms of trashing with Beelzemon and Myotismon type cards. Take Skull Satamon for example. This card could trash the top 2 cards of your deck, then return 1 card with Demon Lord and its traits from your trash to hand. In addition, its inheritable made it so that when a card is trashed from your deck, you gain 1 memory. This is one card that definitely started playing with the memory system more, and I definitely liked this because memory as a resource was valuable. And considering you're trashing cards via an RNG method, you don't necessarily get to pick what cards go to trash. Skipping quite a few sets, Ignitemon would be one of the first Digimon to gain memory on all turns, once per turn when you play a Digimon by an effect. Likewise, Blue Meramon had the same effect. What was definitely interesting is that you still had ways to cycle with this particular card, and once you reached your top end, all hell could break loose with additional memory shenanigans. In my opinion, this is what set Anubismon over the top because you had cards that could cycle quickly through the deck, play Anubismon to play Mervamon, then gain memory and play a bunch of bodies to the board. But in more recent times, card effects have gotten way more generic, and as a result, this is why purple cards continuously see the ban hammer. Eismon, for example, was limited shortly after release because of how easily it could be cycled in combination with on-deletion effects. Interestingly, Eismon Scatter Mode would also be hit because of how effective it was to fill your trash with specific components. Keep in mind, this was also when BT2 Gabumon and Starter Deck 6 Gabumon were limited to 1. The reasoning here is BT2 Gabumon could draw 2 and trash 1 with its inheritable on deletion, while Starter Deck 6 Gabumon was not once per turn. These restrictions were ultimately to curb the play of Apocalypse. The only problem was, there were other problematic cards in rotation. The Purple Massacre would continue with Anubismon, Garurumon X, and Gabumon X getting the restriction to 1 next. all for the sake of dealing with Apocalypse. Just one problem. This was also the same list in which they went ahead and restricted Apocalypse to 1. And ultimately, this is why Garurumon X fundamentally breaks what purple decks want to do. When you had 4 copies of this card, chances are you also ran 4 copies of the starter deck Garurumon that could play Matt Ishida. No, not that Matt Ishida, this Matt Ishida from the same starter deck. Because even promoting up a Gabumon, you could evo into Garurumon to draw and trash a card. Matt could suspend itself to gain you a memory, and then Garurumon X could net you another memory while also drawing 2 and trashing 2. Overall, when purple cards can cycle and fix your hand on consistency, that's fine and dandy until you add the extra resource of memory. Looking at cards of today, BT14 Goblimon may be one of the most played level 3s, in which when one of your effect trashes a card in your hand, you gain 1 memory. Seems fair and fine, right? Here's the kicker. You now have a level 3 Digimon that when it digivolves into, say, Dark Lizardmon, Garurumon, Dobermon X, or Bakamon, these Digivolution costs go from 2 to 1 overall, assuming there's no memory floodgate in play. Still seems fair, right? But when you combine these cards with training options, memory boosts, or even scrambles, now you're introducing a lot of memory efficient cards that can refund you memory, or reduce Digivolution cost in which by the time you get to level 6, you've probably spent 2 or even 3 memory. X-antibody Protoform adds another layer in particular to Lord Nightmon X decks. And ultimately, when all is said and done, you've established a wide board with little to no memory. Purple and blue decks are notoriously good at this because they have many effects to help gain their memory back via drawing cards, or in purple's case, drawing and trashing to fill up the trash for even more powerful cards like Jack Raid. This discussion is only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the purple problem, because fundamentally I feel that design-wise, Fenrir Lugamon Takamikazuchi is one of the more broken cards in the Digimon card game. While it's nice that you can DNA Digivolve from the trash, it's the when Digivolving effect that ultimately takes the balance of the memory system and throws it out the window. In the Digimon card game, there is only one singular card that sets your opponent to 3 memory, and it's literally this card. So even if you utilize BT14 Balmon multiple times when you trash cards to go from Lugamon to Lugarmon, Soul Lugarmon to Fenrir Lugamon, even after all the memory you've technically spent to go up this chain, for even 8 memory total, none of that matters when your Takamikazuchi hits the board and sets your opponent to 3. For a comparison, even with EX1 Machine Dramon, this card lets you tuck sources under it from the hand or trash, and as a result, you gain 1 memory for each one placed. So at 1 memory, you set your opponent to 10. Then assuming you slot 5 cyborgs underneath, you gain 1 memory for each source placed. Pretty balanced. In order to even stop the Takamikazuchi play, you would need specifically a floodgate that prevents Digimon from being played by card effects. But what's the chance of survival when your opponent could climb up the entire chain and delete multiple bodies? To close off on this specific topic, there's a hard conversation now with players in regards to should Bandai continue making generic card effects. Case in point with Goblimon. But on the other hand, making cards more archetype specific would force specific Digimon back into specific lines. And we've already seen this with specifically card effects, in the Greymon and Garurumon line, who typically require their names to be Greymon or Garurumon respectively in order to function. What are your thoughts on the history of purple cards, and do you think there needs to be a hard look at whether they should remain generic, or tack on additional conditions that would only trigger with a specific archetype? Let me know your thoughts, and I'll catch you next time. This is DIGI-PANDA, logging out.